somebody has a solution to this deputy president crisis. Oh yes, in case you didn't know, or in case you didn't realize it, it is a crisis. And in case you didn't realize it, we cannot go on like this for much longer. Something has to give very soon. Yeah, so it is a crisis. Anyway, somebody has a solution. Soy legislator Caleb Kosetani has the solution. Is of course a firm supporter of the deputy president and is also the deputy secretary general of the Jubilee party. Oh yes, the same Jubilee where the secretary general of the party said a few days ago that the deputy party leader, William Samoei Ruto, will not be allowed into Jubilee House to make statements in future. My point is, the Secretary General of a party should be reading from the same script as his deputy. What? Now, Caleb Kosetani's solution, wait for this one, is a snap election. Yeah. Kosetani says, with this deputy president Manenos, the current government is dysfunctional. And if the other side of the political divide within the same party is fed up with the deputy president, then the president should make the call, dissolve the government, and call for fresh elections immediately. He says a fresh election is the only way out because you cannot divorce the structure creating the post of party leader and deputy party leader. They're joined at the hip. Now I'm going to shock you, because I was also shocked when I came across this during my research for this video. On March 11th, 2020, yes, this year, almost 100 legislators from both the National Assembly and the Senate met outside Parliament buildings and addressed the press. And these legislators were all pro-Ruto. And the spokesperson that day was Gatundu South legislator Moses Kuria. And the long and short of what Kuria told the press was that there was a plan to replace the deputy president with ODM leader Raila Odinga. And Kuria challenged Raila to stop making piecemeal changes, including a planned impeachment against the deputy president, and instead provoke a contest which would pit him against the deputy president through a snap election. In fact, to quote Kuria, he said, "Tuko tayari kwa uchaguzi. Tuko tayari serikali ivunjwe na twende kwa debe." Now. Coincidence? Or has this been the plan for some time? The deputy president's camp says something in March this year, and then they repeat exactly the same thing in October this year. Can that really be a coincidence? In my view, I don't think so. It is not a coincidence. Now, I can already hear many of you saying, "Hey, Chris, what are you talking about? We can't have an election now. How?" Now hold your horses. It's not me. I am simply analyzing and trying to dissect the latest from Kenyan politics. That's all. It's not me. But let us also stay real. Because for starters, we know that the current administration will resist an election, a presidential election, with everything they have. Not now. because the president still has 2 years. Well, almost 2 years to complete his term and leave office. And we can all see that he's very busy tying up things, and especially his legacy. But we also know that politics tends to be unpredictable. And a skilled politician, and a good one at that, will tell you that things do not always go according to plan. In other words, politicians are used to being forced by circumstances to go in a certain direction. Oh yes, even in African countries. Bottom line, you must remain real all the time when analyzing politics. But you cannot afford to brush off anything. You really can't afford to rule out anything. I have to tread carefully now because I'm aware that this issue of the deputy president, Team Kileweke versus Team Tanga Tanga, is a very emotional topic. Because we have on one side of the political divide people who loathe the deputy president. They don't want to hear anything coming from the deputy president's camp. And we also know that the deputy president has his very firm supporters. And some people are claiming that those supporters of the deputy president are growing in leaps and bounds in terms of numbers. You heard David Ndii's statement recently. Dr. David Ndii says that it is the failure of this government, the suffering of Kenyans, that has forced many into the deputy president's camp. So, shall we try very hard to analyze this without emotions, whatever side of the political divide you belong to? Because I believe it is important. I also appreciate that it is very difficult to be active in politics, listening to analysis, reading newspapers, watching political shows on your television without emotions. It is almost impossible. You're bound to have emotions. But I'm begging you, let us leave our emotions out of it for a moment and ask one important question. Will a snap election solve this problem? The answer is a firm yes. Of course it will. Question number 2. Is a snap election practical or even possible right now? The answer is a firm no. So let's break it down. We know for a fact that anywhere in the world, a free and fair election has the effect of cooling political temperatures. I mean, the people have spoken through the ballot. So politicians tend to shut up. It is too early to start throwing barbs at the new government. What will you criticize? They have not even started work. And if you have won the election, you tend to be humble and you tend to fear disruptions of your program, whatever you want to do. And so you will tone down any attacks or anything you want to say about your worthy opponents, the opposition, the people you have defeated. Indeed, in many instances, what happens is that an olive branch is dangled on those who have lost the elections. Let us work together. Let us assist each other. The elections are over. Now let us work for the people. That's what usually happens. It is what I'd call an instant coffee solution to high political temperatures. But having said that, I find it mind-boggling to even start to think of how we can have an election now. How? And there are many reasons. The issue of pop from the 2017 elections, presidential elections, has still not been resolved. Most voters who will be asked to vote now will be very worried if their vote will count, if the elections can truly be free and fair. And you can't blame them. In my view, we don't even have an IEBC capable of handling a presidential election right now. Most of the commissioners resigned. Some of them are still trying to tell us something about the 2017 elections, and the mishaps and the dodgy things which happened, and they're trying to tell us this from a foreign country. And so far they're speaking in parables, they're not talking straight. Others will bring up the issue of money. We all know that there's no money. And then there's another very huge problem for politicians and anybody who would want to vie in such a snap election: financing your campaign. You see, when you know a general election is coming 5 years earlier, there's a huge difference. You can prepare, you can seek financiers, you can negotiate, etc., etc. But a snap election, where do you even start? And while it is true that we have some politicians in the country who have very deep pockets and are ready for an election at any time, and indeed, if we are to believe what Moses Kuria said in March, Jubilee politicians allied to DP Ruto are very ready for an election, unless he was joking or unless he was trying to provoke something. Anyway, the truth is, very few have those deep pockets. Very few others are capable of identifying a financier, putting together their campaign funds within a very short time. Very few. Even though Caleb Kositani told us the solution is a snap election, therefore one would assume that he is ready, as well as a lot of politicians within Team Tanga Tanga are very ready for that snap election. And if this is true, that would give those particular people an advantage. Some would say an unfair advantage. But by far the strongest argument against a snap election right now is the argument that the issues of 2017 have still not been resolved. I'm of course talking about the issues that the BBI is supposed to address, so that future elections are peaceful, so that during future elections people can vote and then go back to work or their business without worrying what is going to happen when the election results are announced. It is still fresh on our minds that in 2017 we had 2 presidential elections. The first one was nullified by the Supreme Court, and there was a repeat election. And we didn't get different results from the repeat election. In fact, it was worse. The NASA presidential candidate, Raila Odinga, even pulled out of that repeat election. Only a madman repeats the same thing, expecting different results. But having said all that, let us try and understand, get into the mind of Bwana Caleb Kositani. And indeed, Team Tanga Tanga, what do they have in mind? Why do they want a snap election? All over the world, people accuse politicians of being opportunists. They see an opportunity, they want to jump and take advantage of that opportunity. Like yesterday, a vast majority of Kenyans are suffering. Kenyans are angry. Kenyans want change. And therefore, it would seem that Team Tanga Tanga believe that the current environment and the current situation in Kenya will be to their huge advantage. And although Raila Odinga is not in government, it will be easy for his opponents to blame him for all the shortcomings of the current administration. We have said this many times on this channel before, but let me just repeat it. In politics, many times, people do not vote for a certain candidate. What they do is that they vote against the other candidate, and therefore you get the vote, not because they like you, not because they think you're the best choice, but because they can't stand the other candidate. And so, more often than not, candidates will focus on getting the voters to hate the opponent enough so that they take the vote away from that opponent and cast it here in their favor. I believe that is what Team Tanga Tanga are saying in calling for a snap election to resolve the current political issues. In my view, and this is going to be controversial, in my view, they have miscalculated. I believe they have underestimated greatly the anger in Kenyans and the anger in would-be Kenyan voters. In my view, Kenyan voters are so angry just now that the majority could easily reject both candidates, both major candidates, which would create the fairy tale Cinderella situation where voters can easily vote for a nobody, a rookie, a very unlikely candidate, an outsider. Oh yes, that is what I think. That's what I believe. Yes, it is true, people have voted along tribal lines before. Yes, most Kenyan voters don't vote on principle. They would rather vote for the candidate they think is most likely going to win. You'll hear a phrase amongst Kenyans, usipoteze kura yako, which of course doesn't make sense. But that is what Kenyans believe, and that is how Kenyans vote, which would make it that much harder for a rookie, somebody who is not a major political figure, an outsider, to win an election against the big boys. Yes, I'm aware of all that. But the mood of Kenyans right now, Kenyans have suffered. Kenyans have learned a very bitter lesson that your tribe cannot help you. Kenyans have learned, to quote President Trump recently, that voting an election has consequences on those who voted. And it is easy to see Kenyan voters shocking the world, going into that ballot box and thinking twice. Those who are tribally inclined, thinking twice and even 3 times before casting their vote. Hunger and suffering changes people. And hunger and suffering can have such dramatic, far-reaching consequences on the way any human thinks. And I appreciate that may be very difficult to understand, for those subscribers of this channel who are well fed, sitting in some air-conditioned office, in some plush building. It may be very difficult for those people to understand what I'm talking about. But that is the truth. Do a simple experiment. Miss a few meals, and then observe yourself and see if you're the same person. To sum it all up, we have reached that place called anything, and I mean anything, can happen. And I dare add that the most likely thing will happen will be the improbable, the impossible, the one you never wanted to imagine, the mind-boggling. That is what is most likely to happen in this place called anything can happen. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.